Hello everyone, I'm Nikita this side. Welcome to your GMAT demo session. First, let us see that what GMAT is about. GMAT is the Graduate Management Admission Test. Who actually conducts this test? The owner and the administrator of this test is GMAC. Why should we actually prefer giving the GMAT exam? Because when you give the exam of GMAT, you appear for an MBA. What MBA does to your career? It actually accelerates your career growth. It gives greater job security. It helps in business networking, and definitely it gives entrepreneurial opportunities. Before starting, we are going to have a fair look on the structure of the GMAT exam. On your screen, you can see the structure of the GMAT exam and their respective timings. The very first section is Analytical Writing Assessment. In it, you get one question of in which analysis you have there is one question given. And you have to actually analyze that question, and that question is actually argument based. You have to write an essay on it, and the time you get on it is 30 minutes. The second section is integrated reasoning. You get 12 questions on it. The question type is mentioned over here, and the time that you get on integrated reasoning is again 30 minutes. The third category of the section is quantitative. You get 31 questions on it, and you get 62 minutes to solve this section. The next section is verbal that we are going to discuss today. It constitutes of 36 questions, and the time that you get on it is 65 minutes. In total, the exam is just little above 3 hours. Today we are going to discuss about verbal of GMAT, and in that too on a particular topic that I'll be announcing soon. Now you see this is the scoring structure. So on AWA, that is argument based topic, you get the scores on a scale of 0 to 6. In the integrated reasoning section, you get a score on 1 to 8. And there is no composite score in relation to it. You get the scores as it is. But in quantitative and verbal, you score basically from 0 to 60. But it is converted to a composite score, and you actually score between 200 to 800. Before starting with, you should know one very important aspect of GMAT, that GMAT is a computer adaptive test. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean by that whatever questions you are having on screen, the next question that appears for you is actually dependent on whether you did the previous question correctly or not, and the difficulty of the level that the question that you get on screen. The next question actually depends on the correctness and the difficulty level of the previous question as well. So, difficult level of the questions depend on how the student has answered the previous question. And your final score depends on 3 factors, that is, how many number of questions you answer correctly, and whatever the number of the questions that you have answered correctly, what was the difficulty level of the questions. So it is not equal that if a student has solved for say 20 questions and the other student has also solved 20 number of questions, but then their score is going to be the same. That's not the case. The difficulty or the level of the difficulty also is a good factor which determines your final score, and obviously the number of the questions that you complete. All right, so these are the factors which actually contributes in your final score. Now, as I just said that we are going to discuss verbal section of the GMAT today. For that, we should know particularly what type of questions appear on the verbal section. The time that we get on verbal section is 65 minutes. And in 65 minutes, we are supposed to solve 36 questions. Now, these 36 questions are actually from the three categories. On the test, you are being tested upon your reading skills, your grammatical skills, and your analytical reasoning skills. As you can see on the right hand side in the pie chart, it's clearly annotated that what number of questions do we get on these three particular topics. So around 9 to 10 questions you get on your critical reasoning questions. 12 to 13 questions you get on your sentence correction questions. And 13 to 14 questions are related to reading comprehension questions. In today's lesson, we are going to focus on sentence correction questions. All right. To start with, first I need to tell you that what type of questions we actually see. Have a look at this question. Just a rough look for now. No need to read in detail for now. Okay. So you see that this is one of the question in front of you, which is underlined, and you get 5 options in relation to the question. What you are supposed to do is you have to select one right option. Okay. So it is like you have to correct, you have to provide the right language, and you have to write, the language should be assessed from each and every aspect, from the aspect of coherence, or you have to maintain the parallelism in that, and you have to view it from each and every grammatical aspect as well. So there are so many things that you are supposed to take care of while solving your sentence correction questions. So name itself is suggestive that you have to correct the sentences. Now, how can we correct the sentences is what we are going to look at it. For that, I will be discussing few of the pointers that we need to take in mind. We need to keep in mind before actually jumping onto the questions. Here, I would like to burst one myth that the students have in relation to sentence correction questions. That is basically students think that everything that is required to solve these questions is grammar. So can't deny that grammar is one of very important aspect, but definitely it's not each and every thing that is required to solve. You need to logically understand the sentences. Until and unless you do not understand the sentences, if you jump directly to the options and keep on reading and you're just rushing through, it's never going to work. So in this lesson, we are going to discuss few tips how we can actually approach the questions, because it is that our understanding at the very moment when we are reading the question and we are rereading all the options which are more or less similar to each other, it becomes very important for us to understand how we are supposed to approach it. So for that, today we are going to discuss few tips. Okay. So to start with, the very first topic that we are going to discuss is like error identification. To start with, what we need to read the sentence that's there in the question, and you should not rush through at all. Understand the sentence very well, understand the core meaning of the sentence. Only then you will be in a good position to move upward. Okay. So how are we supposed to error identify? Basically, let's patiently look at all these all these tips that are written on screen in front of us. The first one says, do not try to fix the sentence. Look out for differences between answer options. Now, let me explain it. For say you read one of the sentence, and then you try to come up with, okay, it is not supposed to be like this. It needs to be in this manner. And you have you have created one picture in your mind that this answer should look like this, but that is not the right approach, because what if the correct option that is somewhere imprinted in your mind now is non-existent in the options? Then you will be like, oh my god, I don't know what to do now, because what I thought is not there. So were I thinking incorrect, or the options are incorrect? So you are actually doing a very big mistake over there by creating an image in your mind. So, what you're supposed to do now, you just read the sentence, understand the meaning of the sentence, do not try to fix it, rather have a good look at all the options that are present in front of you and try to trace down that what differences those options are bringing in front of us. Okay, what the options are bringing. So if I say A is different than B, because in A is present and in B R is present. But what if you were not thinking on this line when you were trying to figure out one of the picture in your mind earlier? So you will not be able to make out the difference. I hope I make sense over there. So we are going to have a look at the second point and the third point little later on. But first, we are focusing on this thing that we are not supposed to fix the sentences. We have to take the clues from the options itself. Okay, let's have a look at this question now. I give you 2 minutes. You 2 to 3 take a good 2 to 3 minutes. You can pause the video or just understand the question very well. Okay, I'm going to read it for you, and if you need to read it in silence, then you can pause the video and you can reread it. Okay, so what's the question? It says, unlike computer skills or other technical skills, there is a disinclination on the part of many people to recognize the degree to which their analytical skills are weak. Pause the video, read it for yourself. Alright, so did you understand the actual meaning of the sentence? That unlike computer skills or other technical skills, there is a disinclination on the part of many people to recognize the degree to which their analytical skills are weak. That means they are paying focus on the analytical skills as well. So understand the meaning of the sentence. That's the very first point that you are supposed to do. Once you are done with the meaning, now start scanning the options from A to E. Okay, scan the options and see that what differences these options are actually bringing for us. Just a minute. All right, so I see that this portion is not very clear in front of us. I hope it's clear now. Right. Okay, I think I'll go with this one only because the E part is cutting out in the other manner. All right, doesn't matter. Have a look at this. Just go through all the options now and try to see that what differences these options are bringing. All right. So I hope that by now you have gone through the options. Now let's look at all the options closely. First one says, unlike computer skills or other technical skills, there is a one thing that I forgot to mention. A part is always as same as the one that is given in the question itself. Okay, so it's going to be the same one. There is no distinction between the question underlined part and A part ever. Basically, the change starts coming up from B option onwards. Okay, now what is there in B? It says, unlike computer skills or other technical skills which they admit they lack. Okay, so you see that clearly it is different from the one that is written in option A. They are interchanging the this option is actually interchanging the piece of information, just like a puzzle. Okay, which they admit they lack. Many people are disinclined to recognize that their analytical skills are weak. You see that which they admit they lack. Now you know that this is the area where option B was bringing the change. Let's look at C. It says, unlike computer skills or other technical skills, analytical skills bring out a disinclination in many people to recognize that they are weak to a certain degree. Now, after comma, they brought up this piece of information first. So when I said that you are supposed to scan the options and you need to actually, the options are going to guide you that what are the areas where differences are coming up. In D, it says many people willing to admit that they lack computer skills or other technical skills are disinclined to recognize that their analytical skills are weak. And in E, what that does is many people have a disinclination to recognize the weakness of their analytical skills while willing to admit their lack of computer skills or other. So at least for now, like once you have read the options, you know where the changes are coming up. Now, students, what you need to know that a comparison is happening over here, right? Unlike computer skills or technical skills, now you need to know that when you are comparing two things, the second part has to be present. I mean, what are you comparing with what? So, if you're going to view this question from this angle, you'll come to know that computer skills or technical skills needs to be compared with the analytical skills right away. Got the point? So, with this logic, you see that what options can you eliminate on this basis? You need to answer that for yourself. Okay, so I'm giving you the instructions and you're supposed to solve it for yourself, and we'll have a look at the other options as well. All right, also one thing, you need to see that you need to take care of one other important point on when you are solving sentence correction questions. You need to see whether the options that are given are in active voice or are in passive voice. Passive voice is never considered correct on GMAT exam. Okay, so if you see that what is happening in all the options, you'll come to know that D is the correct option. Okay, reason being, you see, many people willing to admit that they lack computer skills or other skills are disinclined to recognize that their analytical skills are weak. So the comparison of technical and computer skills is aptly made with the analytical skills. Okay, in comparison, it is not done in the other options. Okay, now if I tell you the flaw in option C, then have a look. It says in many people to recognize that they are weak to a certain degree. You see that the meaning is not quite clear. They are weak to a certain degree to what? The meaning is being hampered. The meaning is absolutely unclear. Weak to a certain degree to what? Okay. In option A, it says the degree to which their analytical skills are weak to recognize. So it is not placed at the right point where it is supposed to be. So what you come to know from this question, that the information should be placed nearby. Okay, the sense, the ultimate target is that the question or the right answer that you are actually selecting has to make a good sense. Okay, all right. Coming back to the previous slide, we just had a look to this thing that we do not need to try to fix the sentence, but we are looking at the different options. Look out for subject and pronoun errors. This is the second point that we need to take care of. Now, what do we mean by subject and pronoun errors? That means it is quite transparent once we read it. It says that the subject and pronoun being associated with those subjects are not going to be very clear. Okay, so we need to see whether the subject that is referred to and the pronoun that we are using in reference to that subject, they have to align properly. They should not sound very ambiguous. Okay, so this is the question in front of you. Please have a look. You read it properly. In the US, Germany luxury brands have succeeded in getting people who might have once thought the cars were out of their league in buying and leasing some snazzy rides. Okay, now there are these options in front of you. You're supposed to read all the options. What Let me give you one highlight over here. You're supposed to scan all the options, look for what changes that the options are bringing. All right, now were you able to see that while first, second, third, fourth option for 1 2 3 options were actually starting with have, and the fourth option is starting with has, right? Fifth one is also starting with has. So you have to actually make a choice between have and has. Okay, how are you supposed to do that? Now see, in the US, Germany luxury brands have, or Germany luxury brands has. So if you pay a good attention to this portion, you will be able to make out that brands have is the right way to approach. Sorry, brands have, yes. So brands have is the right way to approach. Brands is plural and it has to have a have soon after that, and has will not do. So if I look at the very right point, if I'll be having a focused approach and I'll see in the very starting, then I really don't need to go into much of the detail for having an eye for the other errors in option 4 and 5. Okay, so first, what we'll be doing, we'll be paying good attention to only options first, second, and third now, knowing that we have eliminated fourth and fifth on the basis of this thing that has is present in the starting, and we need have in relation to, because we just mentioned brands, that is plural. All right. Now have a closer look at option first, second, and third. The another difference that you will see is that in one option it is like buying and leasing. In the second one they are saying to buy and lease, and in the third they say to buy and lease. Okay, so you can decide on this factor as well. So you see that what would we say, that how are we approaching the options? We are seeing that where the differences are coming up, and then we are having a closer look. We are deciding on the options, the changes where they are coming up, and then we are actually making a choice which one to choose. So the next change that I see is in buying and leasing, to buy and lease or to buy and lease. Definitely, on this basis, we will eliminate the first option, because ing continuous tense is not making any sense as per the tense we are actually dealing in. Okay, so now we are down to second and third. Now see that what change second and third are bringing in front of us. And when you'll have a closer look, you'll see that the difference is coming up, that once is placed at the different locations. So let's read the second one. It says have succeeded in getting people who might have once thought, the once thought, who might have once thought. And it says in getting people who once might have thought. So the correct placement of once is in the second sentence, which brings us to the which brings us to the conclusion that B or to in this case is the right answer. All right. Now, let me take you back to the third pointer that to approach the questions. It says that always look out for, I'm sorry, it says it has to be four. Okay, for three-fourth, sorry, 3/2 split. Okay, now what do we mean by that? It says that out of the five options that you get, out of the five options A, B, C, D, E, out of the five options that you get, mostly, I mean, like a 9 out of 10 cases, it it is going to be like the three of the options will be having a similar pattern and two of the other options will be having another pattern. Okay, now if we even if we don't read the question and we have a look, like what are we saying, what are we trying to say? It says that three of the options are starting with the rates of manic, the rates of manic, and two of the options are starting with manic depression. Okay, so 3/2 split means deciding on this thing only, that whether you have to stay on to the rates of manic or manic depression. Actually, in the previous question as well, if you see, we made a choice over there by selecting have or has. So it gives you a point of view that you are not supposed to uh, waste your time by looking at all the wrong yeah, all the areas where errors are there. Okay, so if you are confident on even one single error and you are making a choice as per that, then you will be going in the right direction. Okay, now let's read the question. It says some psychiatric studies indicate that among distinguished artists, the rates of manic depression and major depression are 10 to 13 times as prevalent as in the population at large. Okay, now by the rule of 3/2 split, you need to decide between this thing. Now, how are you supposed to decide whether we need to go with the rates of manic depression or manic depression? Read the sentence which is apart from the underlined portion, or read it in full. Actually, I would say, so you see the word prevalent over here. Prevalent. Now, what do we mean by prevalent? Prevalent means widespread. Okay, what would be widespread? Now, the rate of manic depression would be widespread or manic depression would be widespread. The rate cannot be widespread. Okay, there is no good relation between these two things. So actually, which lands us to eliminating A, B, and C right away. You see that if we apply our energy, our mind in the right direction, then in by just one logic, we are able to eliminate three of the options out of five, which is like a win-win situation. So A, B, and C we will eliminate because the word prevalent is not going in coherence with the rates. Prevalent widespread could be one topic, one heading. Okay, not the rates. So now let's have a closer look at D and E option. Okay, some psychiatric studies indicate that among distinguished artists, manic depression and major depression are 10 to 13 times as prevalent when compared to manic depression and other, and major depression are 10 to 13 times more prevalent than in. So we see that the difference that D and E is bringing in front of us is that one is saying as prevalent when compared to D. Option actually goes wrong because of the presence of as, because it says as will be followed by another as slow as fast as. So when you make comparisons using as, it has to be followed by another as, which is missing in this option. So we are left with E option, and logically as well, E is the right answer. So I hope by now you are understanding that what we need to do. We need to understand the sentence, the meaning of the sentence very well, and then we scan the options. We see that what options, what are the differences that the options are bringing in front of us, and then we start solving them. Students, I would like to add something over here, that there are so many rules that we learn, on the basis of which making a choice becomes easy. So for now, I'm not largely discussing on those points, because they need to be discussed in depth. Okay, for say, we view the uh, uh, relation in a subject verb format, or modifiers format, or we check the parallelism, we check the subject verb argument, and we check the pronoun argument. And there are like so many topics, I would say, that we need to actually learn. And we learning about these topics actually gives us the vision that how are we making the choices. It may sound to you at this point, okay, so I have been doing these questions since ever, and I have a vision for the changes that the options are bringing up. Actually, to create that vision, you need to learn those concepts, and that is what the classes are all about. Okay, now, let's see the another aspect of how we can approach these questions. It could be like we have to solve the errors now. Okay, error resolution. So, what are the pointers that I've written under head this? It says resolve the main big ticket errors first. Do not get stuck with particular phrases. Move on to another parts. There are more errors than you think there are. So what does it mean basically? When a student reads the question of sentence correction, they try, sometimes they get stuck on one point, that I am not able to make a difference. But by reading the question and scanning the options, that this is the difference that option A, or say option C, is bringing up, but you don't know how to decide on it. Okay, so you are very unclear on this. Then what the challenge, what that's the challenge in front of you. And to come out of that point, you are supposed to opt this technique, that you're not supposed to stick at one point. Okay, if you're not getting it, try to understand this thing, that that is not the only point, or the understanding of that very particular area, which is going to land you on the right answer. There are many errors. Even if you are not able to go through with one, you must be aware that there are many other errors existing as well. So you should not get stuck at one point. If you are not feeling okay with that, and you're not feeling confident at that point, move on. Okay, move on from that point, start looking for the other errors, and start looking for the big ticket errors first. That means try to take a bigger picture into your take a bigger picture actually. Okay, so it's not about focusing on the tiniest details all the times, but having a look at the bigger picture also helps a lot. Now, let's have a look at this particular question. um, it says, please read. It says, to force a person to retire solely because they have reached certain arbitrary age is like denying a person a job because of sex, race, or religion. Okay, so now read the options and see what changes the options are bringing in front of us. So the moment you will see the options, you will see that their starting is different. So option A and option E are starting with to force. Option B, C, D are starting with forcing as the first word. Okay, so you need to decide on that. Can you do it already? So now you see, if you're unable, you see the difference, but because it's the starting of the sentence, you're not able to decide whether it should be to force or forcing, and you might feel that it is too early for us to decide on it. So this is the actual thing that I'm trying to discuss right now, that even if you feel stuck and the answer is not coming right away, you should not stop. Move on and start looking for the other errors that the options are bringing. Try to have a look over there. All right. Okay. So now let me tell you that what is happening over here. You see that if you get stuck on deciding to force and forcing, the answer is not coming easy. But once you move further into your reading, you see that to retire is the common thing in all the five options. To retire, a person to retire, a person to retire, and so on. Now the concept of parallelism says that to force has to be followed with to retire. So we have to retire fix, it should have the backup of to force, which brings us to the point that forcing is the wrong word over here. And just with this logic, we can eliminate B, C, and D. How easy it would become if we have the right concepts in our head. So that is what we learn in the classes actually. Okay, so now in the moment of second, we are down to A and E as the options that we have to decide upon. Now look that what is the difference between A and E option. If A is saying to force a person to retire solely because they have reached a certain arbitrary age, is like denying a person a job, and E is saying is like denying people jobs because of sex, race, or religion. So you have to decide whether you need to go with a person or people. Now, E is the correct answer because in A option, it is written that because they have. Now, if you're using they, you can't say a person. So this is not idiomatic. Okay, so they are not being followed. Again, I'm repeating, guys, I am not discussing from a very focused approach right now. All to have this vision, we learn all the concepts, and for now maybe you are unaware of the concept. That is why if I will keep on bringing up the terms that you are unaware of, you will not be able to make a good connection. That is why for now I'm using the very layman language for this. Okay, now another set of points that we need to take care on this while approaching questions or sentence corrections are that look out for passive voice to eliminate options. I mentioned about it earlier as well, that we need to be GMAT is not very preferable of passive voice until and unless in the rare case that all the options are in passive voice and you have to make a choice from the passive voice itself. Otherwise, if one or two options are in passive voice and the rest of them are in active, then you have to go with the active one and not the passive one. Okay, now look at the pointer. It says do not eliminate options because they are unfamiliar. Unfamiliar need not mean incorrect. Okay, a very good question. A very good tip, I would say, that at times because we we know the grammar rules just as it is, but we are not very used to speaking all the sentences correctly because English is not our first language, I must say. Okay, so it actually it happens at times that one of the option, because it seems like no, we don't say it like this or it is not sounding correct, we eliminate that one. But students, you need to take care of this thing, that even if the option seems unfamiliar, it doesn't mean that it is grammatically wrong. And here we are looking at this point of view that it has to be correct grammatically, okay, and logically as well. So let's have a look at this question. Okay, so it says teratomas. And now another thing that I would like to tell you, if just in case you are not unable to pronounce this word, what you are supposed to do, just read it with the initial letter. Say T. Although it's teratomas, and it happens that there are some words which we are not able to pronounce, and we are very short on time on the exam. So don't waste your time reading, uh, going into looking, asking yourself, okay, what could be the right pronunciation of this word? That's truly wastage of time. Just read it like T. Okay, T are unusual forms of cancer because they are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone, not normally found in the organ in which the tumor appears. Now, by now, you very well know that how we are supposed to approach the questions, scan the options, look for the differences that the options are bringing in front of us, and then decide on those. So, we see that A, B, and C are starting with because, and D and E are starting with in that. So, even if we see the difference, we learned the rule of 3 by 2 split, but that doesn't necessarily means that we are going to come up with the right logic to eliminate 3. So because another point that we discussed is, if you are not confident at one error, no need to feel panic about it. Okay, there are many other errors existing as well. So if not this, then we are going to have focus, and then you should focus on another errors that are present in the questions. All right. Now it says because they are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone. Such as tooth and bone. Tooth and bone are what? Such as what? So this is inappropriately placed over here. Okay, you need to tell what tooth and bones are. Okay, tissues such as tooth and bone, tissues. Okay, so these are the types. These are the types of something, and that something is missing. Do you get the point that why we are eliminating it? If I compare tissues with, for say, ligaments, okay, so I need to compare tissues with ligaments, not the type of something. Okay, so with this logic, we eliminate A. Let's have a look at B and C options. Students, you can pause the video. I might be, it might feel that I am rushing through the questions. So definitely you can pause the video and you can take as much time as you want to understand the meaning first, and then you can listen to the explanation that I'm giving over here. Okay, now you see that what B and C options have in common. They say tissues like tooth and bone, that are. C also says tissues like tooth and bone, tissues like. You see that I traced out one of the difference, that some options are using such as, such as, such as, and B and C are using like. Now, let me tell you the concept over here, guys, that such as on Gmat, such as is like example that you are giving, and like is the liking. So I say I like playing football, so I like play. Like is the liking factor, and for example we use such as. Now you see what we are focusing on in this particular question, that whatever sounds familiar to us is not supposed to be correct all the time. So, and what sounds unfamiliar doesn't mean it would be incorrect. So, even if in layman language we might interchange the words such as and like, but grammatically they definitely do not mean the same. So, like means liking, and here we are giving up the examples. With this logic, we will eliminate B and C as well. We definitely go with the elimination process, right? Now we are down to D and E. Let's see what difference D and E are bringing in front of us. D says in that their composition tissue such as tooth and bone is, and E says in that they are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone tissues. So I told you that in A as well, this subject was missing, and in E They are bringing in the tissues, the reference, and with this logic, E becomes the right answer. Okay, another thing is doesn't make sense. You are definitely talking about two things and not one. So you see that I have highlighted many errors in the current options. Let me let me conclude something over here. We started the question by making out the difference in the starting of the options by looking that three of the options were starting with because, and the rest of the two options were starting with in that. But you see that we were not able to make out, it was not necessary for us to make out the difference with that very logic. Okay, 3 by 2 split is going to work in few of the options, and in other options it's not going to work. Not when I say it's not going to work, that means that even if it not comes naturally to us to trace out the option, then it's not a necessity. Don't get stuck. Now the correct option over here is E. Let us plug it in. Let us read the full sentence by putting E as the correct option. It says T are usual forms of cancer in that they are composed of tissues such as tooth and bone, tissues not normally found in the organ that the tumor appears. So this is the right answer. Alright. Now moving further, we need to increase our speed because time factor is a real factor on the exam. For that, what we are supposed to do? Some tips in relation to these questions. Sorry, I mean like to increase the speed. What we can say? The first one says ignore non-underlined parts that have which followed by information within commas. I'm going to explain that thing further. Let's have a look at the other options, other pointers. So second says read long sentences with x's and y's. Now what do we mean by this? That few questions are going to be very long. I mean like it is going to have a lot of information in it, so you have to trace down the information that is somewhere in your mind after first read, but you came to know that it is not supposed to be read again and again. So you can underline the portion and mentally you can mark it as x, and another part of information you can mark it as y. Okay, so instead you need to squeeze the information. You need to squeeze the information so that you get the bigger picture clear. Okay, now remember the sentence may be right as it is. What do we mean by this now? That it is, remember in the starting, I told you that A option is the very same as the one that is actually given in the sentence, that is underlined. Okay, so many students do not select A as the right option because they say that because the exercise is all about correcting the sentences, and they subconsciously feel that by correction means the one that is given is incorrect and we have to choose from the rest of the options that are given. So that's not the case. There are at least 3 to 4 questions out of the total questions that you get on sentence correction on GMAT, that in which like they have A as the correct option. Okay, so be very clear on this fact that A option can be the correct one. Okay, now coming back to the first point, which said that ignore non-underlined parts that have which followed by the information with commas. Now, students, what do we mean by this? We say, let's read the question and then we'll understand better. It says, intended primarily to stimulate family summer travel, the new airfare, which allows both an adult and a child to fly for the price of one ticket, and also shortens the advance purchase requirement for family travel to a minimum of 7 days rather than 14. Okay, you can pause the video, you can understand it, give yourself the time to understand the question well, and then listen to the explanation that I'm going to give. All right, now let's see that this sentence is having this which. and it is giving some information after which allows both an adult and a child to fly for the price of one ticket. What tip I want to give you over here, that this is the extra information, although it is non-underlined. This is extra information that we are not supposed to pay focus on, which allows both an adult and a child to fly for the price of one ticket, is absolutely extra, which actually hinders our reading. Okay, we do not get the right context if we read so much of the information. So whensoever you see this which coming up after a comma, that means the part of the information followed after which is extra information, and when you are trying to understand the full context of the sentence, you can overlook it. Which means how we could have read it, we could have read it in this manner: intended primarily to stimulate family summer travels, and also shortens the advance purchase requirement for family travel to a minimum of 7 days rather than 14. You see, I eliminated this information from which to ticket, and once I read it in continuation after the airfare, and also immediately it comes to our mind that and is not making sense. So if we know the very we are very sure on the on how to approach the questions, how we are supposed to view the questions with the concepts, then the questions seem to be difficult, but they are not very difficult, I would say. Okay, so with the logic that we just discussed, we will be eliminating A and B, because and is not making absolute sense over here. Now let's see that what differences C, D, and E are bringing in front of us. Now C says also shortens, D says also lessens, and E says also shortens. Now also lessons is wrong here, because we use the word lessons when we are actually talking about the uncountable quantities. Okay, shortening is countable and lessening is uncountable. Okay, so we with this logic D will be eliminated and we are down to C and E. Now have a closer look at what difference C and E are having in them. C says also shortens the advance purchase requirement for family travel to a minimum of 7 days rather than that of. And E says also shortens the advance purchase requirement for family travel to a minimum of 7 days rather than. So we see that of is extra in this, right? Let us plug in the information in the actual question and see whether that of is required at all or not. Intended primarily to stimulate family summer travel, the new airfare which allows, sorry, I will not be reading the information with which. Let me read it. It says intended primarily to stimulate family summer travels. The new airfare also shortens the advance purchase of requirement for family travel to a minimum of 7 days rather than 14. Rather than that of 14 is not required. You are making the direct comparison with 7 days rather than 14. So that of is extra. Okay. So we are not unnecessarily going to add on the words, which brings us to the point that E is the correct answer. I hope you have understood. By now you have like a good idea about how we are supposed to approach the questions of sentence correction on GMAT. Good luck for your preparation.